Hey everybody, this is a piece called Self-Management and Efficiency by Mihailo Marković. This is from the book Life Without Money, edited by Anitra Nelson. Oh shit, where am I at? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Life Without Money, Building Fair and Sustainable Economies by Anitra Nelson and Frans Timmerman. So here we go. Editor's note. Mihailo Marković was a prominent member of the humanist Marxist praxis group, constructively criticizing developments in the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia from 1963 to 1992. Praxis was an intellectual journal that drew on Marx's early humanist writings and advocated a creative use of Marxism within the Yugoslav model of self-management. Marković's analysis draws on his experiences, is engaged and practical, and for non-market socialists addresses some key questions associated with organization and the satisfaction of human needs. Except for the two boxes with excerpts from other works by Marković, this chapter is a reprint of the final chapter of his The Contemporary Marx, Essays on Humanist Communism. Here we go. Now the actual text. The following two questions seem to sum up most controversies about the idea and existing practical experience of self-management. 1. What is self-management? 2. How is the principle of self-management to be reconciled with the principle of efficiency in a modern economy? That the former is a real problem follows from the fact that the term, quote, self-management, end quote, is being used in a very indiscriminate way, covering a number of different social forms which in fact lack some necessary conditions for correct classification as self-management. 1 second, please. Thus, workers' control is by all means an important progressive objective in a class society. And yet, workers' control may only contribute to preventing undesirable decisions. Workers' control is still far from determining a positive policy in enterprises and local communities. Workers' participation is also a progressive demand that has been gaining more and more ground in the international labor movement. And yet this is a broad, vague demand and in various forms could be accepted by the bourgeois ruling class without really affecting the general social framework of a capitalist society. This is because workers might be given rights to participate only in decision-making on some matters of secondary importance. They might be in the minority in a given body of management. Workers might be allowed only advisory or consultative functions and not the right to take decisions. Finally, workers might be denied access to information and left in the position only to endorse decisions that have been prepared by others and presented without any real alternatives. Dictatorship of the proletariat, which in Marx's theory referred to a transition period of increasing democratization, is nowadays associated with the experience of a strong centralized authoritarian state, which is actually in the hands of a political bureaucracy, and which uses the phrases, quote, the power of the Soviets, end quote, or, quote, workers' state, end quote, in order to conceal and mystify the real oppressive nature of social relationships. However, the idea of self-management should also not be mixed up with the idea of a mere decentralization. An atomized, disintegrated society lacking necessary coordination and conscious regulation would be at the mercy of blind, alienated social forces. Self-management is surely not the absence of any management and conscious direction within the society as a whole. Here we come to the second question mentioned above. The most customary objection to self-management as some form of social system in which people themselves somehow take care of matters of common interest is that such a system is incompatible with the demands of technological efficiency and rationality in a complex modern industrial society. The argument is self-management is a noble humanitarian idea, but self-management cannot be brought to life because workers and ordinary citizens are not educated enough to run a modern state and a modern economy. Professional experts are needed to do the job. Therefore, self-management is either a utopia or must be reduced to a rather limited participation in decision-making. This kind of criticism surely overestimates the usefulness of the technostructure and enterprise in decision-making on crucial social problems. But it points to a real problem which can be resolved only by developing a rather sophisticated model of self-management, which leads us back to our first problem. The idea of self-management rests on a more general philosophical principle, that of self-determination. Self-determination is a process in which conscious practical activity of human individuals becomes one of the necessary and sufficient conditions of individual and group life. This is a process contrary to external determination, i.e., a process which necessary and sufficient conditions of the life of some human individuals are exclusively factors outside those human individuals' control and independent of those human individuals' consciousness and will. To be sure, self-determination is always conditioned by a given social situation, by the level of technology, the given structure of production, the nature of political institutions, the level of culture, the existing tradition and habits of human behavior. However, it is essential for determination, 1, that all these external objective conditions constitute only the framework of possibilities of a certain course of events, whereas upon the subjective choice and conscious human activity will depend which of these possibilities will be realized. 2, that the subjective choice is autonomous, genuinely free, and not heteronomous and compulsory. This means that the subject, by his own activity, creates a new condition of the process instead of merely repeating time and again an act to which he was compelled or for which he was programmed. This act need not be arbitrary and groundless. This act should be an act of self-realization, of the actualization of basic human capacities, of the satisfaction of genuine human needs. This active role in the course of events, this creation of new conditions instead of mechanical reproduction according to the laws of the system and inherited instincts, this extension of the framework of possibilities instead of permanently remaining within that framework is a specific power of men, characteristic of every human individual, present at least in the form of a latent disposition. Under certain social conditions, this power can be alienated. It will be concentrated in the hands of a privileged social group and becomes that privileged social group's monopoly. Alienation is a consequence of 1, the division of labor, 2, the accumulation of the surplus product, 3, the creation of institutions, the function of which is to take care of common social interests, 4, increasing mediation between the individual needs and the needs of the whole society. Political and economic alienation involves a process of social polarization, which at one extreme transforms a conscious, potentially creative subject into an object, into a reified, oppressed, and exploited mass, whereas at the other extreme it transforms a normal, limited, and fragile human subject into an authority, into a mystified entity that has supernatural power and control over human lives. Such a critical analysis leads to the question, under what social conditions would the life of individuals and communities be less and less reified, less and less contingent upon external authority, and more self-determined? There are four basic conditions. The first such condition is negative. The coordination and direction of social processes must no longer be in the hands of any institution that enjoys a monopoly of economic and political power, such as capital, the state with its coercive apparatus, and the party with its bureaucracy and hierarchy of power. People themselves must decide about all matters of common interest. And this is possible only if the society is organized as a federation of councils composed of non-professional, non-alienated representatives of the people at all levels of social structure, in the enterprises and local communities, in the regions and whole branches of activity, and finally for the society as a whole. The second condition of determination is reliable knowledge of the situation's scarcities and limitations, of the existing trends, of the conflicts to be resolved, of the alternative possibilities of further development. Freedom is incompatible with ignorance or with a biased perception of reality. The right to take decisions without previous access to information is a mere formality. Self-determination becomes a facade behind which a real manipulation by others, by political bureaucracy and technocracy takes place. Therefore, a genuine self-determination presupposes the formation of critical study groups at all levels of social decision-making, from the local community and enterprise to the federation as a whole. The third condition of self-determination is the existence of a powerful democratic public opinion. The genuine general will of the people can be formed only through open communication, free expression of critical opinions, and dialogue. It is clear then that any monopoly of the mass media by either big business, the church, the state, or the party must be dismantled. Such a monopoly enables a ruling elite to manipulate the rest of the population, to create artificial needs, to impose its ideology, and to rule by consent of a, quote, silent majority, end quote. Therefore, mass media must be free and genuinely socialized. The fourth condition of self-determination is the discovery of the true self of the community, of the real general needs of the people. This condition is basic and most difficult to achieve. Therefore, most of what passes under the name of freedom in contemporary society is only an illusory freedom, mere opportunity of choice among two or more alternatives. But alternatives are often imposed. Choice is arbitrary, and even when that choice has been guided by a consistent criterion of evaluation, this criterion is hardly ever authentic, based on a critical, enlightened examination of one's real needs and one's long-range interests. This condition clearly assumes a universal humanist point of view and practically implies creation of a new socialist culture and a humanist revolution of all education. Discovery of oneself, of one's specific individual powers and potential capacities, learning how to develop them and use them as a socialized human being that cares about the needs of other individuals would have to become the primary task of a new humanist education. The preceding analysis clearly indicates that the transition from reification and external determination to freedom and self-determination is a matter of a whole epoch. Existing forms of self-management, seen in this broad historical perspective, are surely of great revolutionary importance, but existing forms of self-management should be regarded as only the initial steps. With general material and cultural development, many other steps would have to be made, many present limitations would have to be overcome. Thus, organs of the class state, in the sense of an instrument of class rule, would have to be replaced by the organs of self-management composed of the workers' delegates who are democratically elected, replaceable, rotatable, and by no means corrupted by material privileges and the alluring career of a professional politician. Planning would have to be a synthesis of decentralized and democratic centralist decision-making. The market economy, with the market economy's production for profit, would have to be gradually replaced by production for genuine human needs. With further technological advance, productivity of work will quickly increase, while at the same time present-day hunger for consumer goods will be replaced by entirely different aspirations. Present-day overstressed concern about production and management will naturally tend to diminish. Self-determination and various other aspects of free and creative praxis will naturally gain in importance. There are two possible ways in which a humanist philosopher might challenge the very idea of efficiency. First, the humanist philosopher might argue that beyond a certain high level of technological, economic, and cultural development, efficiency will begin to lose efficiency's importance. After all, efficiency and efficiency's present-day meaning is ability to produce a desired result, to perform well a certain defined role in the social division of labor. In a highly developed future society, automata will increasingly replace man in routine physical and intellectual operations. As, quote, production of specified desired results, end quote, performance of well-defined roles, end quote, are typical routine activities, it would follow that man will let computers be efficient instead of him, and he will engage more and more in the production of unique, beautiful objects, and in playing new, surprising, not defined in advance roles. In other words, he will engage in praxis, and in praxis the question of efficiency either does not arise at all, or is of secondary importance. Second, it might be argued that the concept of efficiency is devoid of any humanist meaning. It is apparently value-free and ideologically neutral. On closer scrutiny, however, it turns out to be ideologically loaded and encouraging certain harmful and dangerous attitudes towards nature and existing society. Maximum efficiency in conquering and controlling natural surroundings means a dangerously growing rate of waste of scarce material resources and available forms of energy. Maximum efficiency in running present-day social organizations and institutions means full-scale endorsement of their inhuman, degrading practices. For unjust systems, efficiency really is their best chance of survival. Under given assumptions, this critique is perfectly sound. In a highly developed future society, both material production and the maximization of efficiency will become social goals of secondary importance. But there is still a primary concern for every present-day society. Man will liberate himself from too well-defined and ordered roles in material production and will afford to relax about efficiency only when he masters efficiency, when he catches hold of efficiency to such an extent that he will be able to relegate it to machines. And even then, there is a sense of the term, quote, efficiency, end quote, which will always be associated with achievement of goals of human activity, whatever these goals might be, which leads us to the second argument. From the fact that, quote, efficiency, end quote, is a neutral concept, it follows that it could be, and as a matter of fact is, associated with all kinds of wasteful, irrational, and inhuman practices. But it also follows that efficiency's meaning would be entirely different with respect to progressive and rational human goals. After all, no theory and no program of social change is possible without some neutral concepts. There is an element of neutrality in most concepts, including self-management. There is no guarantee that self-management will always in itself make people happier, more rational, less alienated. It is only part of a complex project, not the absolute. With these qualifications in mind, one has to take the problem of compatibility of self-management with efficiency quite seriously. While dozens of countries average $100 of national income per capita or even less, there is still poverty of large segments of population even in Europe and North America, while human beings still spend the best part of their life in boring technical work, further increases in efficiency are a necessary condition of human liberation and possible self-realization. Human liberation is certainly inconceivable without the right of every individual to participate in social decision-making. But is it really the case that full, meaningful participation in each citizen destroys efficiency? This does not happen if the following three groups of conditions are satisfied. 1. The first group follows analytically from the very concept of integral self-management. Workers' councils in the enterprises and the councils of local communities are not isolated atoms but elements of a whole network at different levels. From the territorial point of view, local, regional, national, federative. From the professional point of view, basic unit, the whole enterprise, the branch, the community of all producers. Any individual has direct decision-making power in the basic units where he works and where he lives, and in addition he has an indirect decision-making power at higher levels through his delegates, freely elected, rotatable, always replaceable, responsible to him. Any unit has all necessary autonomy and responsibility for decision-making on the matters of its specific concern. But there must also be a readiness to cooperate and harmonize interests with other units of the system. On the other hand, higher-level organs of self-management must have the maximum possible understanding of the particular interests of each subsystem. They are vastly different from the organs of the state insofar as they are not instruments of any ruling elite. They don't oppress and tend to reduce interference to the minimum. But in matters of common interest, after a certain policy has been widely discussed and accepted, its decisions must be binding. Otherwise, social life would lack a minimum of necessary organization and coordination and would tend to disintegrate. 2. Another group of conditions follows from the general characteristics of self-determination discussed above. Organs of self-management operate in a field characterized by the following features. Mass media of communication are free. Mass media of communication contribute to the creation of a genuinely democratic public opinion. Political parties in the classical sense are absent, but there is a plurality of various other forms of non-authoritarian and non-manipulative organizations, and there is an ongoing process of education and raising of socialist consciousness of all individuals. The third group of conditions under which the principles of participatory democracy and efficiency would be reconciled derives from analysis of the basic stages of the process of decision-making and of different kinds of knowledge and competence needed. Each rational technical decision presupposes a critical analysis of the situation, including scrutinizing the effectiveness of policies adopted in the past. B. A long-range program of development, a set of basic goals of the organization with respect to which all concrete technical decisions would constitute the means. In other words, there are three distinct necessary functions in the process of rational decision-making. One is fact-finding, analytic, informative. Another one is governing, political. The third is technical, managerial. Accordingly, there are three distinct kinds of knowledge relative to these functions. Factual knowledge, know that. Theoretical knowledge of the basic needs of the people in a certain situation. Know what is good and just to do. Technical knowledge of the ways in which basic decisions can most effectively be realized. Know how. Thus, in addition to the organ of self-management, composed of wise, experienced persons who understand the basic needs at a given moment, who know what could and should be done, there must be, on the one hand, a group of analysts who critically study the implementation of adopted programs and the changes in external and internal factors, and, on the other hand, the technical management composed of people who, quote, know how, who elaborate concrete alternative policy proposals and to try to bring to life the decisions of the organ of self-management in the most efficient way possible. In this complex structure, the technocratic tendencies are the main threat to self-management. To be sure, while there is still a state and a ruling party, much greater danger comes from political bureaucracy. However, we are discussing here a model of a highly developed integrated self-management in which the function of the traditional state and authoritarian party have been taken over by the central organs of self-management. A permanent source of technocratic tendencies is the fact that it is the managers who hold the executive power, who usually have better access to data and who, therefore, might try to manipulate the self-managing council. Excessive power of the managers, the executives, is dangerous because their understanding of social needs might be very limited and their scale of value very biased, giving priority to typically instrumental values of growth, expansion, and order. Contrary to a common prejudice that modern society requires the rule of experts, the truth seems to be that experts are the least qualified candidates for good, wise, rational rulers, precisely because experts are only experts and their rationality is only technical. Self-management has at least three powerful possible devices to resist manipulation by the technostructure. 1. Independent access to data. 2. The iron rule that the management always prepares its proposals for the organ of self-management in the form of alternatives among which to choose. 3. The right to elect, re-elect, or replace the manager. The organ of self-management must have its own informative and analytic service and depend on the manager. Otherwise, it will be at the mercy of the half-truths produced by the management whenever the management is interested in having the management's own particular point of view adopted. The organ of self-management must, time and again, assert its right of freely taking a decision after carefully examining other possible alternatives. Once it is reduced to an institution that merely votes on proposals prepared by the management, it clearly becomes a victim of manipulation. In order to keep the balance and to be able to assert its rights, the organ of self-management must have the power of rotating the manager. There is no real danger that a, quote, primitive, quote, ignorant workers' council will fire a good, efficient manager. The experience of Yugoslav self-management is that if the workers' council ever fires a manager, this is either because the manager is utterly incompetent or because the manager is too authoritarian, or both. But the real danger is rather that the workers use this right too rarely or too late, after considerable damage has already been done, and the enterprise operates with heavy losses. The reluctance to react promptly indicates that what jeopardizes the efficiency of production in socialism is rather too little than too much worker participation. A developed self-management has the historical opportunity to overcome both wasteful and irrational models of contemporary efficiency, one imposed by capital and the market, the other dictated by the authoritarian political machine. Okay, that's the end of the piece, and then there's boxes here that I guess have like summaries or bullet points, or I don't know what they are. Are they quotes? I guess they're quotes. Yeah, these are Marković quotes. In a restricted sense, self-management refers to this is a Marković on self-management. In a restricted sense, self-management refers to the direct involvement of workers in basic decision-making in individual enterprises. Means of production are socialized, owned by the workers' community or by the entire society, ... In a more general sense, self-management is a democratic form of organization of the whole economy, constituted by several layers of councils and assemblies, ... At each level, the self-management body is the highest authority responsible for the development and implementation of policy and coordination among relatively autonomous enterprises. In the most general sense, self-management is the basic structure of socialist society. In economy, politics, and culture, in all domains of public life, education, culture, scientific research, health services, etc. Basic decision-making is in the hands of self-management councils and assemblies organized on both productive and territorial principles. In this sense, it transcends the limits of the state. Members of the self-management bodies are freely elected, responsible to their electorate, recallable, rotatable without any material privileges, ... In contrast to parliamentary democracy, it is not restricted to politics, but extends to the economy and culture. It emphasizes decentralization, direct participation, and delegation of power for the purpose of a minimum of necessary coordination. ... As early as On the Jewish Question, Marx expressed the view that, quote, human emancipation will only be complete when the individual ... has recognized and organized his own powers as social powers, so that he no longer separates his social power from himself as a political power, end quote. ... In Capital Volume 3, Chapter 48, Marx explains the idea of freedom in the sphere of material production. Quote, the associated producers regulate their exchange with nature rationally, end quote. And, quote, under conditions most favorable to and worthy of their human nature, end quote. ... All socialist revolutionary upheavals, whether successful or not, from the Paris Commune to Polish Solidarity, more or less spontaneously created organs of self-management. The source of that quote is from Mihailo Marković, Self-Management, in Tom Baltimore's edited Dictionary of Marxist Thought. Next quote. Mihailo Marković on needs. Up to this point, science has not been highly engaged in the problem of human needs. With respect to a typology of needs, much less has been achieved than in the typology of minerals, insects, or nuclear particles. Still worse, as long as science is predominantly descriptive and value-laden, science lacks the criteria for making an indispensable distinction between authentic and artificial needs. The prevailing theory in all capitalist societies begins with the principle that the market is the basic regulator of production and that the market should indicate the type and quality of goods desired by consumers. Therefore, the market is supposed to bring knowledge of the structure of human needs, which individual companies can take account of in their production plans. ... However, the proposed (socialist) solution proved to be entirely unsatisfactory. If planning committees and political forums are to decide which human needs should be satisfied and developed and which should not, then these planning committees and political forums obtain a tremendous power which exceeds every other in history. ... Complete identification and fulfillment of authentic human needs are possible only under the condition of transcending manipulation by both the modern market economy and by bureaucratic authority. Only under conditions of free experimentation, self-government, and training for self-knowledge and self-improvement is it possible to develop a critical consciousness of artificial needs and to have an orientation which leads to the satisfaction of true needs, those which lead to the realization of specific fundamental human abilities. Mihailo Marković. And the source of that was from Man and His Natural Surroundings in The Contemporary Marx, Essays on Humanist Communism. Thanks for listening.